Bean, I heard that my client, Mr. Patterson, had been hospitalized. I'm still on my business trip, and I don't think I can get back anytime soon. Would you mind visiting him on my behalf?
Having received the call from Director Johnson, who's currently on a business trip, I agreed to do so. My name is Bean Crawford, a peculiar name held by only about 1,100 people nationwide. Due to the length, Director Johnson has been calling me Bean. If it's a hospital visit, I must bring some gifts. However, the person in question is the CEO of a major client company of ours, and moreover, I've never met him, so I had a hard time deciding what to bring. I thought about buying some fruits online, but I thought it would be too ordinary for such an opportunity to get my face remembered. So, I decided to bring the most popular bean daifuku from the traditional confectionery shop run by my family. Bean Crawford's Confectionery was a traditional sweet shop that my great-grandfather started shortly after World War II. Based on the fact that his surname contains the word bean, my great-grandfather decided to make bean daifuku the flagship product of the shop, and after much trial and error, he created bean daifuku with carefully selected ingredients. The mochi dough of the bean daifuku made by my great-grandfather is thin, with resilience and stretchiness, and it's soft, with plenty of sweet red bean paste. The moderately salted green peas are gently cooked, providing an excellent accent without ruining the smoothness of the mochi and bean paste. The bean daifuku became popular for its delicious taste, and Bean Crawford's Confectionery became a beloved store among the locals. That flavor was inherited by my grandfather, and my father, who was training under him, was supposed to take over after marrying my mother. But my father passed away due to illness when I was little, and there was no successor left. So, my mother decided to inherit the third generation and raise me to keep the shop. I believe that any profession is hard to master, but to become a full-fledged traditional confectioner is said to take about 10 years. It's a harsh world. I grew up watching my mother, who had no time of her own as she was working under my grandfather's strict supervision every day. Because of that, I never wanted to become a confectioner, and I chose the path of becoming a salaryman. I contacted Mr. Patterson's company in advance to make sure it was okay to visit him, and informed them of the date and time of the visit. On the day, I received a bag of freshly made bean daifuku from my mother.
If he eats our bean daifuku, he'll recover from his illness in no time.
I smiled brightly at my mother and nodded, "You're right." I wondered how she could always smile so brightly when she was working from early morning until late at night. When I arrived at the hospital where Mr. Patterson was hospitalized, I first went to the general reception and asked to visit his room. As I was walking towards the room that I was told, a woman who seemed a little older than me was standing in the hallway. She slightly bowed her head when she saw me, so she must be Mr. Patterson's secretary. "Thank you for your time. My name is Bean Crawford from Longgate Corporation. I came to visit Mr. Patterson on behalf of Mr. Johnson today." When I greeted the secretary, her gaze shifted from me to the bag I was holding.
Is that bag the gift for the CEO?
"Yes, I've brought a bean daifuku from a traditional confectionery shop run by my mother. I would be glad if the CEO likes it." Suddenly, the secretary's eyebrows furrowed.
Excuse me, but is your confectionery shop a well-established famous shop? Do they supply to any department stores? Have they been featured in magazines or TV?
While puzzled by the rapid-fire questions, I replied, "It was established shortly after World War II, but we don't supply to any particular place. We're running it small in the local area, so we've been featured in local magazines and free papers, but we're not famous nationwide." As I was answering, the secretary's face was getting more and more stern.
Didn't you think it was rude to bring such a cheap gift for the CEO? Everyone who has visited the CEO before has brought luxury goods or famous confections.
The secretary snatched the bag from me and stuffed it into a nearby trash can.
I can't give this trash to the CEO. Could you go and buy another gift right away?
She said in a high-handed manner. I have never felt any particular affection for the confectionery shop my family runs, but the secretary's behavior made my anger surge up like a volcano. But another calm side of me was desperately reminding me that she was from a major client company, and I somehow managed to maintain my composure. I'm very sorry for the trouble. I'll go and buy one right away. As I turned on my heel and headed outside the hospital, I was filled with rage and regret as hot tears welled up and the back of my nose hurt. In a state of intense agitation, I got into a taxi and asked the driver, "Excuse me, is there a department store or a large supermarket nearby?" I asked him to take me there. I arrived at a large supermarket, which was stocked with famous brands of Western and Japanese sweets, but I felt guilty towards my mother and couldn't bring myself to buy anything. There was a set of premium fruits available, so I had a ribbon tied around it, bought it, and took another taxi back to the hospital. Seeing me appear in the hospital room, the secretary smiled contentedly.
Well, I'll give this to the CEO.
In this way, I was finally able to meet the CEO after making it through this hurdle. I told the CEO that I was visiting on behalf of Director Johnson, offered my condolences, and handed over my business card. Somehow, I was able to fulfill the role that Director Johnson had asked me to perform, and let out a sigh of relief. A few days passed, and I was called by Director Johnson, who had returned from a long business trip.
It seems that Mr. Patterson has been discharged from the hospital. I'm going to visit the company with a discharge gift, so I'd like you, Bean, to come with me.
I felt a bit down at the thought of having to meet the CEO's secretary again, but I was relieved when he said there was no need to buy a discharge gift. I thought Director Johnson must have prepared it, but there was no bag, so I thought maybe he would give a gift card.
We've been waiting for you. Please, this way.
We were led to the CEO's office by the secretary in a polite manner. The way she treated me and Director Johnson was completely different, and I was made acutely aware that she was looking down on me. The secretary who had led us to the CEO's office was about to leave, but the CEO said, "Baker, please stay here," and although she seemed momentarily confused, she remained. Then soon, there was a light knock on the door of the CEO's office.
Please, come in.
At the CEO's invitation, the door opened, and the person who came in was, incredibly, my mother. Why is my mother here? Unable to comprehend the situation, my mother greeted, "Mr. Patterson, I brought a discharge gift," holding the bag of Daifuku that I was supposed to give to the CEO the other day. The CEO's secretary was staring at my mother in shock.
Thank you so much for going out of your way. I'm sorry for the trouble.
Mr. Patterson received the bag from my mother and took out the pack containing the Daifuku.
May I?
When my mother nodded with a smile, the CEO's secretary left to prepare tea in a hurry. Mr. Patterson, with a big smile, picked up a Daifuku and took a bite. Mr. Patterson, after savoring the taste in silence for a while, he took a breath and muttered, "Pa, this taste, it's nostalgic." He picked up a cup of tea left by the secretary, took a sip, and started reminiscing. When my grandfather was the owner of Bean Crawford's confectionery, the CEO lived nearby. His family was large, consisting of his grandparents, parents, and 6 siblings, and they didn't have much financial leeway. In his family, it was a custom to buy Japanese sweets from Bean Crawford's confectionery on special occasions, and the CEO enjoyed eating the shop's most popular Daifuku above all. The CEO often went to the store with his mother and occasionally received leftover sweets from my grandparents. which was what he was really looking forward to.
When I eat this Daifuku, it brings back memories of my family, who were poor but happy.
The CEO said, reminiscing. He had seen my mother, still young, peeping from the store and helping out from time to time.
I can't tell you how happy I am seeing that young girl grown up and inheriting the taste of this Daifuku.
Hearing this, my mother smiled.
I grew up eating my grandfather and father's Daifuku, and I didn't want to lose this taste. As long as there are customers who look forward to our Daifuku, I plan to continue running the shop.
I also like our shop's Daifuku and think it's delicious. But I've never felt like this before. Looking at my mother talking proudly, I felt a bit embarrassed. I had a question. Even though I wasn't able to give you the Daifuku as a get-well gift, how did you know about our shop, Mr. Patterson? Then, Mr. Patterson glanced at his secretary standing beside him with a nonchalant expression on her face.
Actually, a nurse came to visit my hospital room with a paper bag shortly after. She heard the conversation between you and Baker and saw how she threw the get-well gift into the trash.
Immediately, the secretary turned pale. The surprised CEO took the bag and noticed the familiar design. He remembered that when I introduced myself, I was Bean Crawford and confirmed it with my business card. He then deduced that my family must be the owners of Bean Crawford's confectionery. After that, he contacted the store, found out that my mother was the shop owner, and asked her to bring some Bean Daifuku on the shop's day off.
Although I was unaware, I am deeply sorry for throwing away the Bean Daifuku that was made with all your heart.
The CEO bowed deeply, and my mother and I felt awkward. No, it's not your fault, Mr. Patterson. However, the CEO kept his head down.
The mistake my secretary made is my responsibility. It was my lack of guidance.
Despite the CEO apologizing himself and thinking that the secretary would reflect on this, she stubbornly insisted, "Everything I did was for you, Mr. Patterson. I believe that only certain things should be allowed in the CEO's mouth. I did nothing wrong," causing the CEO to sigh deeply.
It seems you need to relearn what is truly important to people. Please leave.
Although the secretary tried to argue back, she was suppressed by the CEO's glare and reluctantly left.
I apologize for the trouble. Please allow me to make amends in another way.
The CEO and my mother had a lively chat about her grandfather and their hometown, and we left the CEO's office after saying our goodbyes. According to a story I heard from Director Johnson later, Mr. Patterson's secretary was dismissed and transferred to a different department. However, she was dissatisfied with this and decided to resign voluntarily. When my mother heard the story from me, she said regretfully, if we could have made her try the Bean Daifuku, maybe she would have changed her mind. Which made me laugh. Mr. Patterson had said he would apologize in another way, and it turned out to be a business proposition. His company also does website production, and he proposed to set up a sales site along with the store's website for free. As expected, the work of professionals is excellent, and now our Bean Daifuku can be purchased online and sales are steadily increasing. We even hired employees specifically for online sales. The truth is, there was a big change for me. I quit the company I was working for and decided to train under my mother. This incident made me realize how much Bean Crawford's confectionery and our Bean Daifuku are loved by people. Not only are they delicious, they also revived pleasant memories. I do not want to lose this flavor, which has been passed down since my great-grandfather's generation, in my mother's generation. I cannot lose it. My thoughts changed, and I wanted to protect and inherit it with my own hands. My mother was surprised and skeptical because I had been so reluctant to take over the store, But when she realized that I was determined, she said with a serious expression, "Well then, I'll be beating you to shape hard, so you best be prepared." Even though I was prepared, the training to become a confectioner was rigorous. Waking up early in the morning is tough. I sometimes have to touch cold water for long periods of time, and carry heavy things as well. There are many things to do and learn, and even when I try to do as my mother says, I can't do it well. Yet, I vowed to continue my efforts so that one day, I could hear from my customers the same words the CEO quietly muttered, "Ta, this taste, it's nostalgic."